In 480 BC, at the narrow pass of Thermopylae, a small force of Greek warriors stood against the might of the Persian Empire. Among them was Leonidas I, a king who knew he was marching toward death. For 3 days, they held the line. Then came betrayal. The pass was turned. The Spartans were surrounded. And Leonidas fell, his body left on the battlefield as a warning to all who would resist Xerxes I. To Persia, it was victory. To Greece, it was a wound that demanded revenge. But what followed next is a story rarely told. A story of fire, strategy, and retribution, where Sparta, and all of Greece, struck back in a way Persia could not ignore. After the fall at Thermopylae, the road into central Greece lay open. The massive forces of Xerxes I moved forward almost unchecked. City after city faced a choice: submit, or be destroyed. Many fled. Among them were the people of Athens. With little hope of defending their city against such overwhelming numbers, they made a desperate decision: abandon it. Homes were left behind. Temples stood empty. Families boarded ships, seeking refuge across the sea. What remained of Athens would soon fall into Persian hands. And when it did, it burned. Flames consumed the city that had once been a symbol of Greek culture and power. The smoke rising from Athens was meant to send a message. Resistance was futile. But Persia misunderstood something. The Greeks were not united by empire. They were united by survival. And the death of Leonidas I had changed everything. What had once been divided city-states, often rivals, now faced a common enemy that threatened them all. Even Sparta, known for its discipline and isolation, understood this moment. Revenge alone was not enough. If Greece was to survive, it needed something greater: unity. Behind the scenes, leaders began preparing for what would come next. Strategies were formed. Alliances strengthened. And most importantly, a plan was set into motion. Because the Greeks knew they could not defeat Persia on land alone. Not against such numbers. But there was one place where the balance could change: the sea. The answer to Persia's overwhelming power would not come from open battlefields. It would come from the sea. As the forces of Xerxes I advanced deeper into Greece, their navy moved alongside them, massive, confident, and seemingly unstoppable. But within the Greek alliance, one man saw an opportunity: Themistocles. He understood something the Persians did not. That numbers alone do not guarantee victory. The Greek fleet was smaller, less intimidating. But it had one advantage that would change everything: strategy. Instead of facing the Persian navy in open waters, where they would be easily surrounded, Themistocles devised a risky plan: to lure them into a narrow strait near the island of Salamis, a place where size would become a weakness. To make this happen, deception was used. A message was sent to Xerxes, suggesting that the Greek alliance was breaking apart, that their fleets were preparing to retreat. It was exactly what the Persian king wanted to hear. Confident in victory, Xerxes ordered his navy forward, into the tight waters of Salamis. But as dawn broke, they realized too late. The narrow straits restricted movement. Large Persian ships struggled to maneuver, crashing into each other, blocking their own paths. And then, the Greeks attacked. Their ships, smaller and faster, moved with precision. Rowers pulled in perfect rhythm as they struck from multiple angles. Bronze rams smashed into Persian vessels, tearing through wood and sending ships into chaos. What was meant to be a decisive Persian victory turned into confusion. Panic spread across the fleet. Commands were lost in the noise of crashing ships and shouting men. The sheer size of the Persian navy became its greatest weakness, trapped in a space too small to control it. From a distance, Xerxes I watched the battle unfold. He had expected to witness the final collapse of Greek resistance. Instead, he watched his fleet fall apart. Ship after ship was destroyed or forced to retreat. The waters of Salamis became a graveyard of broken vessels and shattered confidence. By the end of the battle, the Persian navy was no longer invincible. This was the turning point, the moment where Greece proved that Persia could be defeated. And more importantly, it was the first step in avenging Leonidas I. Because now, the Greeks were no longer fighting to survive. They were preparing to strike back. The victory at Salamis changed everything. For the first time, the massive war machine of Xerxes I had been shaken. Not destroyed, but exposed. Realizing the danger of being cut off from supplies and support, Xerxes made a critical decision. He withdrew much of his army and returned to Persia, leaving behind a powerful force to finish the conquest of Greece. That force was commanded by one of his most trusted generals, Mardonius. Mardonius was not reckless. He understood that the Greeks had gained confidence after Salamis. Instead of rushing into battle, he attempted something different: negotiation. He sent offers to Athens. Peace, power, even autonomy under Persian rule. All in exchange for submission. But Athens refused. The city had already burned once. Its people had already fled. And now, there was no turning back. War would decide everything. As tensions rose, the Greek city-states prepared for a final confrontation. This time, they would not rely on the sea. They would face Persia on land. And leading that force was Sparta. Under the command of Pausanias, the Greek alliance gathered one of the largest armies it had ever assembled. Spartan warriors stood at the center, disciplined, heavily armed, and driven by something deeper than strategy. They carried the memory of Leonidas I. This was not just another battle. This was the moment of reckoning. The two armies met near the plains of Plataea. 4 days, they watched each other. Neither side eager to make the first move. Supply lines were stretched. Pressure mounted. Small skirmishes broke out, testing strength and resolve. Then, the battle began. Unlike the chaos at Salamis, this was a clash of discipline and endurance. The Persian forces relied on archers and lighter infantry. Fast, flexible, and numerous. But the Greeks, especially the Spartans, were built for direct combat. Heavily armored, shields locked, they advanced with precision. The sound of bronze striking bronze echoed across the battlefield as formations held strong against waves of attacks. Mardonius attempted to break them, sending forces again and again to shatter the Greek line. But it didn't break. Then came the moment that changed everything. In the heat of battle, Mardonius himself was killed. The command structure collapsed. Confusion spread rapidly through the Persian ranks. And the Greeks seized it. What followed was not just victory. It was complete defeat for the Persian forces left in Greece. The battlefield of Plataea became the place where the invasion ended, where the threat was finally broken, and where Sparta, alongside its allies, delivered the final blow. For the Greeks, this was more than survival. This was revenge. The fall of Leonidas I had been answered, not with words, but with victory. With the Persian army defeated at Plataea, the immediate threat to Greece had been removed. The cost had been immense. Spartan families mourned their fallen king Leonidas I, while Athens and other city-states began the slow process of rebuilding what had been destroyed. Temples, homes, and civic structures needed restoration. But the victory was more than just physical. It was symbolic. It sent a message to Persia and to the wider world. Greek freedom and honor could not be erased. The sacrifice at Thermopylae had not been in vain. Every Spartan who had fallen, every Greek who had resisted, became part of a legacy of defiance and resilience. Sparta, in particular, emerged with renewed prestige. The memory of Leonidas I was honored not just as a king who died heroically, but as a symbol of the unbreakable Spartan spirit. Statues, inscriptions, and songs ensured that future generations would remember that no tyrant, no matter how powerful, could crush their resolve. Meanwhile, the Persian Empire, despite its immense resources, had learned a hard lesson. Victory in numbers alone could not guarantee dominance over a people united by principle and courage. Xerxes' ambitions in Greece were permanently curtailed, and the story of Spartan resistance spread across the ancient world, inspiring not only Greece but later generations far beyond its borders. This was a turning point in history. Not just a military victory, but the moment when the courage of a few men reshaped the fate of an entire civilization. Sparta had avenged its fallen king, and Greece had ensured that Persia could never simply rewrite the story. The events at Thermopylae, Salamis, and Plataea became intertwined, a single narrative of sacrifice, strategy, and ultimate triumph. What Persia had tried to erase from history had been immortalized instead, etched into the cultural memory of the Western world. The story of Leonidas I and the Spartan revenge is not just a tale of battles or strategies. It is the story of courage that defied impossible odds, of sacrifice that inspired generations, and of a people who refused to let tyranny dictate their destiny. The story of Leonidas I and the Spartan revenge is not just a tale of battles or strategies. It is the story of courage that defied impossible odds, of sacrifice that inspired generations, and of a people who refused to let tyranny dictate their destiny. Though the Spartans were few in number, their discipline, training, and unbreakable will became a force that shaped the course of history. The memory of Thermopylae and the victories that followed, Salamis, Plataea, became more than military achievements. They became symbols of resilience, unity, and the power of principle over sheer force. Persia had sought to erase Leonidas and his warriors from history. But the truth endured. Monuments were built, poems written, and stories passed down through centuries, ensuring that every Spartan stand would never be forgotten. The lessons remain relevant today. Courage can inspire. Unity can overcome overwhelming power. Sacrifice for a just cause can echo across time. Sparta's response to Leonidas' death reminds us that even in the face of annihilation, the human spirit can rise, fight, and ultimately prevail. History remembers not only the battles fought, but the ideals defended. And in every retelling of Thermopylae and the subsequent revenge, the names of the fallen Spartans live on, not as casualties, but as immortal symbols of honor, defiance, and the unyielding pursuit of justice. For Sparta, for Greece, and for all who value freedom over oppression, the story is clear. True strength is measured not by numbers, but by courage, unity, and the willingness to stand even when defeat seems certain.